All right, thanks so much for being with us here on Atlanta News First Plus. We've been following this breaking news of that school shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. Really horrific situation. We're talking about a school shooting at a school that is for very young children, from preschool to sixth grade. But think about that, pre-K kids at this particular school here. 3 children were killed in this, along with 2 adults at the school, and the shooter, we understand, is also dead in all of this. I want to bring in now an expert on issues like this, because unfortunately, this is a very disturbing trend that we're seeing in our nation right now. Apologize. I'm just having a little bit of technical difficulty. If you'll just bear with me to work through this here. Sorry, but we have Chief Ronald Applin joining us, who's Executive Director of Safety and Security for Atlanta Public Schools. Thank you so much for being with us, Chief Applin. First of all, what's your reaction to this tragedy?
It's always sad to hear, for anyone to be injured or hurt or killed, but especially kids. This is just something that's just near and dear to my heart. It's the last thing I want to hear about, during the school day. The parents, as parents, you send your kids off to school. It's supposed to be a place where they can learn, they can have fun, they can be friends, but it's not the place that's supposed to die. It's just not right. Just not right about that.
It's so heartbreaking, and it's always sad when there are school shootings. It's always tragic, when someone loses their life. But I think here, what's so shocking is how young the children are at this particular school, pre-K to sixth grade. It's Covenant Presbyterian School in Metro Nashville. Fairly small school, 200 is the enrollment number there. When you hear about how young the kids are at that school, does that just add a new layer to all this?
I mean, it really does. You're talking about a population that really can't defend themselves. You have little kids who go to school. Their intentions are to learn. Is not to have to contend with issues that they're dealing with, like an active shooter. This is the last thing that they should be thinking about, be concerned about, as students and as a parent, especially. As a parent, dropping your kids off at school, you don't intend for something like this to happen. You just never expect this. So it's very difficult to hear, very difficult to even read about. It's just challenging.
Absolutely. And, I want to ask you, because of the very young age of these kids, how do you even prepare for this? I mean, how do you even, normally, I know that there's some training drills and so forth that can be done at schools, but what do you do when you're talking about pre-K kids?
Right. I mean, for when we think about training for or preparing the students for things like this, you have to think about the teachers. The teachers are the most important part in this. If we can get them the appropriate training so that they can give direction to the kids about what to do in situations like this, that's going to be important. Just going beyond that, create an environment where it's just difficult for people to get onto campus. I don't know the specifics about this, but you want to create an environment where it's not so easy for strangers to come on the campus. And if they do, you can screen them in a way to understand if they're supposed to be there, if they have a reason to be there, if they have a connection or something like that. But you want to just create as many layers of as you can to try to protect the kids as well as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, what about, in terms of teachers, educators, how is how has the approach changed when it comes to school safety? And I know obviously you work with Atlanta Public Schools. How about in Atlanta?
Well, I mean, the teachers have to be prepared for this. One of the things that we do, we provide training for our teachers on how to respond to active shooter events. And for kids at this age, they have to be um, be in a place where they can give direction and give instructions to kids in the middle of a crisis to keep them safe. We've expanded this training to not just teachers, but when we think about students, one of the areas we're targeting is going to be middle and high school students. They can understand this a little bit better than the elementary school kid. So we rely on the teachers to be able to perform the actions that are needed and give instructions to those kids as they're dealing with the issue.
Yeah. Um, so here in our area, specifically Atlanta Public Schools, how have the approaches changed over the years? I don't know, say the last 10 years or so, because unfortunately, this is a trend, and we're seeing increasingly more school shootings.
Right. Well, this goes back to Columbine. I mean, that's back further than 10 years. So when you think about this is something we've been dealing with for quite some time now. When we talk about what has changed, the one approach that we are looking at now is being as how proactive can we be in trying to prevent this. The best response is prevention. Looking at ways to try to um, stop things like this from happening before they even get started. And those are some of the changes that we're seeing in anonymous reporting systems, in setting up the perimeter security around a school to force people to come into one entry, creating security vestibules so that the person cannot come once they're inside. They can come inside the building, but they're not all the way in, so they can have access to kids unless the people in the front office allow them inside the building. I mean, just a lot of different things that we're looking at. Even adding SROs to schools, we're starting to see a lot of trends in that. So when we think about what has changed,
SRO, school resource
um,
officers.
yeah, that's correct. School resource officers, or even police officers. However you want to, however you want to staff that. I mean, that's what we're starting to see trends in different school systems and school districts here in the U.S.
So you mentioned the school resource officers. What do they do, and how does that work? I mean, is it a lot of it relationship building and trying to get ahead of problems and maybe identify potential problems?
Now, in Atlanta, that's one of the things that we focus on. We provide a lot of training to help officers interact with students, to help recognize certain disorders, to build relationships with students, because we believe if we can build relationships with those students and they're aware of something that's about to happen, they're going to have conversations with us about that. We want to create an environment so that those students are comfortable coming to us, sharing with us when there are problems, so we can get ahead of a lot of things. They say 84% of the time when these events happen, someone knew about it. And if we create an environment that students are comfortable sharing with us that information, that's 84% of the time we'll be able to prevent things like this from happening.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about families in the larger context? What can families do to identify issues before it becomes out of control?
One thing we say that safety is everyone's responsibility. It's not just the police, it's not just the school, but it includes the families too. Doing things like, I know a lot of parents may not like this, but check their bags. Check their bags and see what's in their bags. Parents pay for the cell phones. Take a look at the cell phone every once in a while and see what they're doing. See who they're interacting with. See who they are friends with. See who they're talking to. Because a lot of things will go back to that simple social media things. Who are they speaking with? Who are they talking to? What type of things are they involved with? So parents can be helpful by asking questions, having conversations with the kids about who they're interacting with and what they're doing. Um, Believe it or not, they could do a lot of things. Again, as simple as checking the bags of their kids, seeing what's in those bags before they go to school, checking those phones can make a big difference.
I'm just looking at some of the comments on our Facebook page, and somebody did mention mental health issues. What do you think? What do you think that we can do at the school level, and maybe systemically, to address that as it pertains to gun violence?
I think one part of that is being able to recognize that there are issues. And one of the trainings that we provide our officers calls Crisis and Intervention Team and Crisis and Intervention Team Youth. It helps us when we're interacting with students or any person, depending upon the things that we see in that interaction, it helps us to identify potential disorders, and we can interact with them in a way that doesn't trigger them or create more issues as a result. But one of the things that Atlanta Public Schools has instituted was a screener. They're screening kids at the beginning of the year, trying to figure out if there are any particular, mostly for learning, but at the same time, if we can go into it thinking, screening and identifying potential problems, we can try to find solutions for those issues. And so a lot of times we find that parents are not so quick to get that help that's needed. And if we can identify the problems, try to get students help, that's going to get us ahead of the game in most cases.
Yeah, that makes sense. What else should we keep in mind? I mean, it's very tragic what happened today, but what else should we keep in mind going forward?
Well, again, safety is everyone's responsibility. Everyone. So if you see something, say something about it. And if you feel like you can't do it outwardly, there are anonymous tip lines that you can call. For example, at APS, we use the Say Something Anonymous reporting system, and there are several others out there that tie into our network that lets us know that something's going on. So if if you see something, say something about it. If you're not concerned about making an anonymous tip, go into an officer, go into an administrator, go into a teacher, find someone you trust, a trusted adult, and tell them what's going on so that we can get ahead of these issues.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Chief Applin from Atlanta Public Schools. We really appreciate your insight and your guidance, so that all of us can do our part to keep our kids safe and keep our community safe. So, really appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, and of course, we're going to continue to cover this story, the latest in the investigation in the Nashville school shooting, here on Atlanta News First and Atlanta News First Plus. Have a great day.